everybody, and welcome to another Agile IT Tech Talk. I'm your host, Sean Spicer, and today we're going to be going over integrated protection and governance of data in Microsoft 365. This is kind of a follow-up to last week's session on Compliance Center. You'll notice that I have finally been placed on the targeted monthly updates, and I've got this wonderful AI-powered subtitles on the presentation. I've been playing a lot with this. It is a lot of great new tools that you don't see when you're in the standard semi-annual updates. So now I've got all of these great things I can demonstrate, but rather than demonstrating the toys, I decided I would just use them in our presentations. So today the session is going to be going over Microsoft Information Protection and Office 365 Advanced Data Governance. So last week in our session on Compliance Center, we looked at different compliance frameworks, how you could group those together and manage your controls organization-wide in an organized and team-driven way. Now what we're going to look at is we're going to look at how to implement the controls in order to meet compliance. So Office 365 Advanced Data Governance is an important part of Office 365 Security and Compliance Center. It allows you to create and enforce policies to retain or delete sensitive information. Two of the greatest values of uniform data policies are security and compliance. So keeping data longer than necessary, it increases security risks from inadvertent or purposeful sharing of sensitive information. So you've got those internal risks that you've got to keep an eye on. However, governmental or industrial regulations may require that certain records be kept for specific periods of time, such as during legal proceedings. A lot of this relates to finance, where you have to hold certain types of data for 7 years, 3 years. Certain things can't be kept for certain amounts if you're working with GDPR. So advanced data governance enables a company to create policies that help ensure both security and compliance needs are met. So today we're going to go through that process with our favorite fake company, Contoso. I don't have any slides that are going to describe the overview. We're going to jump right into the demo. We start out here at protection.office.com. This is the Office 365 Security and Compliance Center, and we're going to focus first on data governance. Now, just like Compliance Center, you've got this convenient dashboard. The Data Governance Dashboard presents you with a quick visualization of the data situation across your company. This helps you make intelligent decisions about what information to retain, what to discard, and what's really going on in your environment. So there are several widgets here, and they can be customized. But let's go ahead and open the Data Governance Toolbox. This is a great place to start. So this provides fast access to the most common tasks in creating good data management policies. Here you'll see two common tasks that aid in moving external data into Office 365. You've got import data and increased mailbox storage. Import data brings in user email boxes, other types of data from other systems using automation and filters to reduce importing outdated information and also reduce the consumption of drive resources. So we've already got some data that's been set up to import later. Increased mailbox storage is used to enable automatic archiving of older mail. This helps reduce unexpected issues when importing large mailboxes from other sources. So the toolbox provides quick access to commonly used wizards for classifying data and applying policies from one single location. So here you can create a label, publish labels, auto-apply labels, create a retention policy, manage events. Got create supervision policies, review and explore label usage, set up alert policies. And these are all things you're going to want to work on as you're moving towards a compliant environment. So on the main dashboard, these widgets give you quick insights into data usage, and they provide some useful links. There's also an overview of where data is stored and how it's growing over time. So Office 365 ADG uses cloud intelligence to proactively recommend policies for you. Recommended policies are visible in the data governance dashboard based on the types of documents in use by your company and the profiles of similar organizations. So for example, ADG provides a widget titled Recommended for You over here. And pardon me, let me get a drink here. Pardon me, I think I'm fighting off a cold this week. So the widget area is dynamic. So this may look different for your team. It's going to be looking at data. It's going to be looking at policies you already have in place. This helps you ensure documents are managed appropriately because you can review these suggestions and implement what makes sense for your company. So let's let users classify their own content. As you use ADG more, widgets are going to be enriched by the intelligence that ADG gathers from the policies and actions that are taking place within your environment. Because this is a demo install, some of these widgets aren't going to show data as they would in a production environment. That's that 0% labels over here. So retention shows how many users' files are currently covered under retention. It even provides a quick way to turn on retention for everyone while refined policies are put into place. Online archive mailbox shows what percentage of your company's users have enabled archive mailboxes. Your content at a glance shows a snapshot of how much and which types of data are being stored. Because this is a demo tenant, we only see email here. And your content over time shows how data is accumulated over the years based on the date created. This gives a really rich view in older tenants, and you've probably got access to this. All right, so let's go ahead and look at importing some data. The import service brings messaging, SharePoint data, and OneDrive for Business data into Office 365. And if you remember our previous sessions about the Microsoft 365 substrate, you'll know that that really includes a lot of other rich data. Now that data can be imported by either uploading it or by shipping an encrypted drive to Microsoft. Some of the data is stored in places outside the cloud, like on-premise servers, third-party apps. Archiving data from those third-party locations is also possible. So let's look at what it looks like to import a PST file. So the intelligent import feature in this import service can filter items in PST when imported to target mailboxes. So let's do this Exchange import. So using the built-in import functions, it's possible to bring data into your unified data governance. Here we're going to migrate a batch of historical data from a third-party archiving solution into Office 365. So import to Office 365. So the data has already been uploaded to Azure, and now we're going to just configure the import. So do you want to filter your data? Yes, we do. All right, so for those of you that operate in the financial industry, you'll know this only import for 7 years. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull in historic data in order to keep compliant. And this graph lets you see how much of the available data will be imported. So we've got more filtering options. We can get really granular on this. So you have the ability to select options related to message senders and recipients, but we're not really going to use those at this time. So when importing, by filtering out data that doesn't need to be retained, you're able to reduce risk associated with data storage and cut down on your data storage costs. For this demo, we're going to come back and do this later. Yes, we want to cancel. Go ahead and we'll close this out now. All right, so let's look at retention. So keeping data longer than needed or required imposes significant costs and risks. For example, it's costly to store unneeded data from users who have left the organization. In addition, the more data that's stored, the greater the risk of a security breach. On the other hand, some historical data must be kept for business reasons and to comply with policies and government regulations. Thankfully, there are powerful tools to manage retention, and policy-based deletion are needed to balance these needs in a uniform way. Office 365 offers 2 approaches to applying retention policies. Retention policies are controlled exclusively by a company's data and governance managers. They're applied across the organization or to specific locations. Retention policies use basic data age-based rules to determine how long to ensure retention and or to trigger deletion. Label policies can be applied automatically or by users. If you remember the classification of information that can take place within Word or Excel, it's the same idea and it works in a unified framework. So users can update data labels using their own insights to refine what data is protected. Label-based retention policies add more choices for policy timing and can trigger a formal review of content at the end of the retention period versus automatically moving data towards removal. So let's go ahead and create a retention policy here. So let's say we decided to retain all the Teams chats and channel messages for 3 years. This comes up a lot. And then delete them unless they fall under another retention policy. This is easy to do using unified retention management controls. From one location, you can administer retention policies for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Skype, and Teams. So let's give this a friendly name, Teams Retention. Next, we're going to create a policy to retain data for 3 years. And then do we want to delete it after this time? Yes. Then we hit next. So here we can set unique locations to focus the policy on, specifically new types of data that are now in Teams messages and chats. You can also apply these policies to other locations like Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Skype. So you've got the include and exclude groups here, and that can narrow down your focus of inclusions and exclusions by individual recipients. So because we're focusing on Teams, we're going to turn some things off here. And here you can see all of the other places that you can do retention. Let's go ahead and turn on Teams channel messages. And again, you can include and exclude based on individual teams, and then turn on chats. And because chats are individual, you can choose users to include and exclude. All right, so when a policy includes automatic deletion, creating the policy will automatically trigger the permanent removal of all data that matches that policy. In other words, be careful in here. Now you've got the warning up here that it will take up to 1 day to apply the retention policy to the locations you choose. That's a warning. It could take that long. It could happen in 15 minutes. So when you're in this page, make sure that you know that you're ready to do this. So we're going to create the policy. We're going to close the wizard. So there are also advanced retention policies. The ability to apply general policies across the organization is powerful, but you also need to set up organizational retention policies for specific types of data covered by regulations or legal concerns. You're going to see this a lot as you work in Compliance Manager, where those controls are spelled out and it tells you you need to create a specific policy to retain data for this long. If you're doing GDPR, though, however, you need to remove it after 6 months or remove it after it's been filed into a specific location. So let's create an advanced policy. Again, we're going to give it a friendly name. And this is the GDPR email removal. So now there may be information that's covered under GDPR that's being kept in email after it's been filed into the proper locations I mentioned earlier. So we're going to create this policy, and then let's give it a description. All right, so it's important to know that retention rules supersede deletion. So this rule will only affect detected data that doesn't fall under other retention policies. So if you have something that supersedes this and says, no, save all emails for 7 years, this will not remove those emails if they fall under that policy. So with GDPR and any email with GDPR covered data not retained by another policy needs to be deleted after 6 months. In this case, we need to use advanced retention settings. Okay, do you want to retain content? So advanced retention settings can detect words or phrases the policy creator specifies. So detect content that contains specific words or phrases, and delete content that contains sensitive info. Now, this is a set of predefined templates that help your organization apply policies to data covered by regulations in their region. Thankfully, Microsoft is already set up for GDPR. So sensitive info. All right, so we're going to use that Microsoft template provided for GDPR data formats. Your organization can also create custom mappings, giving granular control over what kind of information is protected. A really cool example I've seen of this is if you are working in a hospital and you are processing insurance claim numbers, they always come in the same format. It might be letter, number. You can set these up on a individual basis for your organization to recognize your own sensitive data. I want to show options for GDPR is EU. And then let's look at privacy. There we go, GDPR. All right, so this is selected by default. And then in the right column here, it points out what information is going to be set up in this policy. In this case, you've got debit card numbers, driver's license number, national ID number, your passport number, the EU social security number or equivalent ID, as well as the tax identification number. Those are pretty much similar to what we have in the US for social security number. If you're setting up GDPR in the US, you can customize this to include an SSN because I believe the EU format is slightly different. All right. So advanced retention defaults to keep content for 7 years. We're going to go edit. All right, so after choosing that pattern, we're going to need to set the deletion rules for the policy. If needed, you can refine the rules in this template to meet your needs. This rule is not looking for large lists of data, but emails with small amounts that could miss other reviews. This template looks for emails containing between 1 and 9 occurrences of the covered information. So that's your min and max count. And let's see, you want to retain the content for 6 months. Oh, that's my mouse. And then do you want us to delete it after this time? Yes. And then click next. Now, do you want to do this across all locations? That includes documents that are in OneDrive and SharePoint, but no, let's choose specific locations. We want to turn off SharePoint because remember, we're setting up this policy to do controls over data that sits in email after it's already been filed. That is probably going to be filed here in SharePoint. So now we're going to finish creating the policy. Noting at the top, ADG is alerting you to how long it will take to be applied for the whole organization. And again, it's up to 7 days. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in an hour. But generally, you want to assume that it's going to take up to a week to complete and apply that retention policy across all of the information in your organization. We're going to create this policy now. So retention policies created in the retention area of data governance are best for broad policies that are almost always true and don't change with changing organizational structures and strategies. They work in the background with no actions required or changes possible for members of your organization. They may be applied to Exchange email, public folders, SharePoint sites, OneDrive accounts, Skype, and Teams. They may also be applied using high-level rules related to the user and the location. If needed, advanced policies that we've looked at that detect sensitive information can be applied as well. Retention policies offer high-level automation, flexibility, and control over how and when different types of data are stored or discarded. So now let's look at labels. There can be lots of content and records that need to be managed in different ways in your environment. Labels in Office 365 Advanced Data Governance help managers do this efficiently. They allow members of your organization to contribute to the precision of your data retention policies. They also allow for events in your business to trigger retention policies. Events like employees leaving, product end of life. Those often have organizational rules attached to them. Labels empower managers to automatically implement data retention aligned with your internal policies. So let's look at classifications and labels. So here we're going to look at retention labels. So one of the added features of using labels is the option to trigger a disposition review when the content has reached the end of its retention period. This is honestly really important because when you're first working in this and you're working in a live tenant, you probably want to review things before they're deleted. The GDPR removal rule is listed here because advanced retention policies uses the label system to mark content using that rule. So we need to create a label to enable retention policies. And let's do sales data content that needs a disposition review by the legal team before it's deleted or archived. So again, we're going to give a friendly name. Always reminds me of that term, use the friendly manual, and we all know what that really was. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click next. You can go ahead and give descriptions for the admins as well as for the users that sometimes you don't want. You don't want your sales guys to see that this is making sure that they are legally liable. You want your admins to actually understand where the data is or why the data is being deleted, what those retention policies might be. So let's enhance the ability of the label by adding metadata. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new file plan descriptor reference ID. Enter a reference ID. So sales 1301. Now business function or department. Let's do sales and marketing. Set a category. Again, sales and marketing. The authority type. And it's a business authority. So if this was a legal regulation put into place, you could set the authority. If it's a finance or an industry-wide authority type, you can set that as well. Let's go ahead and do next. So we're going to turn on retention. Now we're given the settings. We're going to use the default setting for retain for 7 years. And then we're going to trigger a disposition review. And then this is going to give you the option to set who is notified when there are items to review. In this case, we're going to set this to Alex Wilbur, who is our corporate counsel. So reviewers will receive email notifications that will have a link to go to the disposition page to review items. All right. And let's notify the sales team as well. All right. And of course, the legal team that answers to Alex. Now, with organization-wide policies, you have the choice to start the retention policy based on the data's creation date or the last modified date. So let's do retain or delete the content based on. So now you can say when it was created, when it was last modified. You can also set it based on when it was labeled or a specific event. Let's just do when it was last modified. Scroll down a bit here. So if a label has the classification record, that label can never be deleted. Once the label is applied, that data cannot be edited or changed. The data will be retained or deleted based on the rule for that label. So this use label to data classify content as a record, that becomes historical data. You turn this on, you cannot turn it off. So now it gives you the review of settings. And we're going to go ahead and create the label. All right. So once a label with its retention policy has been created, it can either be published so members of the organization can apply it to data, or it can be auto-applied using rules. So let's publish label. And this just tells you what labels are going to be published. So if you're going through and doing a large batch of these, it will show all of them, and 7 years keep, review, and delete. So you can have a really quick overview of what that's going to look like. So here we're going to publish the label to all locations for users to apply as needed. So let me choose specific locations. These are the locations you can modify. We're not going to change any of them. So we're going to go back to all locations. Again, this includes content in Exchange, Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, so that whole substrate.
Right.
Now we'll use the same name for the policy used in publishing the label. Click Next. And we're going to publish the labels. So again, warns you, it will take up to 1 day for labels to appear to your users. Labels will appear in Outlook and Outlook web app only for the mailboxes that have at least 10 megabytes of data. Let's publish these. And we can close. All right. So now let's take a look at the documents for OneDrive. I've lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so let's apply an existing label. Once a label is published, there'll be a time period for a tenant before the users can apply the label. We've already published some labels and we can apply them in places like OneDrive and Inbox. So let's look at the annual financial report draft. We're going to go ahead and click details. Now in the right panel, we have the ability to choose a label under Apply Retention Label. And here we can see that you can apply labels to files in OneDrive with just a couple of clicks. The copy of the annual report is now protected by the new retention policy. Set it confidential. All right, go into Outlook. Now you can find and apply the same label to an email in Outlook. Let's see. We've got alerts here. Low severity alert. Right click, assign policy. And here you can see you've got that confidential label, as well as other labels that are available. There are a lot of labels in this tenant, but let's just do confidential 7 years. So by giving users the ability to tag their own content, you help ensure that the right policies are applied across your organization. Of course, automatic policies have their own benefits because you can't always trust your users to properly apply these labels. But really it comes down to a combination of that triangle between trust, productivity, and security. And you'll have to work and figure out what's best for your organization. So let's look at label policies, security. All right. And where are we? Okay, I'm gonna close this. All right, so let's look at data governance again. All right, so content retention periods are often based on the age of the content. However, sometimes you need to base some retention on when a specific event occurs, regardless of the data's age. The time since the event is what drives those policies. We are pushing up on half an hour, and that's why I said that this is part 1 of 2. So I'm going to go ahead and stop here. We'll continue next week, we'll continue the week after next. Next week, we will be joined by Rob Gates, who will be working in teams with us, probably be touching on some of this data classification as well. Robert Gates is one of Microsoft's foremost experts in teams, teamwork. He works very closely with members of our team here, delivering our modern workplace practice. So that's going to be a really good Tech Talk, and I hope you all can make it. For those of you watching online, Tech Talks are a benefit for our clients, but we do like to share these sessions online. So take a look in the description below for a link to our full blog. Give us a like and follow, and subscribe. Thanks a lot, everybody. We're going to go ahead and shut down recording and open this up for questions. For those of you online, have a great day.